Oh, great.
And go to the end.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. 8:20.
Gotta make that
At 8:20.
don't make me sleep on the couch in the office.
We need to have one vote in Megan's office.
Makes it a little bit better.
But no,
That ain't saying-
I mean, no, that's a little close.
Close in my office.
I'm gonna be sitting right on top of your lap.
That's okay.
Here, we can move down.
You're moving up?
Yes.
Yeah, let's do this. Yeah.
Oh, we gotta filter some.
Yeah, carefully.
Yeah, I just. Yeah. All right, good evening, everyone. Abby Day Molina, I'm Chair of the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission. We're meeting today, October 27th at 5 p.m. in a hybrid fashion with some people physically present at the trailer at 131 Pleasant Street and some people virtually on Zoom. The first thing we're going to do is a roll call, so please respond affirmatively when I call your name. Joe Topham.
Here.
Nat Lowell.
Here.
Christina Gelmy.
Here.
Brooke Moore.
Here.
Hillary Report.
Here.
Mike Mizzarelli.
Here.
And Abby Demona as the chair. I'm here. We do have a couple of inmates traveling. The first thing I'm gonna ask for is a motion to approve the agenda.
So, second.
Okay, motion by Nat, second by Joe. All right. Joe. Motion. Nat,
Aye.
Christina. Aye. Brooke. Aye. Hillary.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
And Abby De Molina as a chair votes aye. Before I'll just note another commissioner has joined. Dave Iverson.
Dave, you're gonna have to sit outside. Promise. Stick in the corner.
All right, we are going to move on to public comment for items not on the agenda. We'll be using the select board's established protocol for public comment, limiting comments to 3 minutes or less and not engaging in substantive deliberation and just taking comments for subsequent future action. If you're participating in the meeting as a member of the public, please ensure you are seated with the other members of the public. If you're a commissioner doing so, please leave the table and join the public, or leave the panelist Zoom and join as a regular public participant, as is standard procedure with all island board and commissions.
Hi, I'm here to make a public comment.
Okay, we'll recognize Hillary Rayford as making public comment.
Yeah, so I am just making a public comment as a member of the public, not as a commissioner. With the courtesy notice that I am submitting a citizen's petition on the town meeting warrant, to, feature my, petition about the governance and enabling legislation. And I did ask for it to be put on the agenda, but, I guess I'll have the opportunity to take that up at some time in the future. So, if anyone has any questions in the future, you can come by me. I'd be happy to talk to you about the petition. And you can find it on the citizen blog. Thanks.
Hey, do we have any other public comment? Okay, moving on, just as a note, there's still some edits being made to the minutes, so we're gonna hold that until next meeting. If everyone's
Both sets.
Yes,
Okay.
both sets. And we'll move on to announcements. I'll kick it over to you, Leslie.
Okay. At last week's select board meeting, the Plus staff gave an update to our, to the articles. Sorry, we had two agenda items. I was getting them mixed up for a second. I gave an update on the articles that the planning board is working on. I also have the NPDC
enabling legislation on the list. I asked the select board if they would commit to placing that on the warrant for the 2026 annual town meeting. They voted 3-2 to agree to do that. So we have our work cut out to finish that up. We have met with, this may be a separate announcement, but if you don't mind,
Yeah, that's
loop
fine.
these together. We do have a staff update. We worked with the communications office. We're working on a video to explain first step, who the NPEDC is, what we do, why these changes are necessary. So that's, something that we're working on for public outreach, just to get this started. We're working on scheduling a public forum in early December to, invite the public in a more casual setting, not something like this, but something a little more
I
like,
mean, something like the trailer.
not the trailer, somewhere, I think a little more inviting, so more to come on that, but we are trying to get all that put together so we can be ready in advance for the warrant.
Other announcements? Special town meeting is on next Tuesday, the 4th at 5 p.m. In the high school auditorium. I know I mentioned this last month, but the NP and EDC will be co-sponsoring CHAPA's annual Cape and Islands Regional Meeting. That will be a virtual session co-sponsored with the Martha's Vineyard Commission, Housing Assistance Corporation Cape Cod Community Development Partnership, and Housing Nantucket. That session will be held on November 6th from 10 till 11:30. If you go on CHAPA's website, you will find instructions on how to register, or also feel free to reach out to me via email. I can shoot you the link. We'll also be sponsoring an EOHLC, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities Accessory Dwelling Unit Roadshow. EOHLC is sponsoring this, going around to different RPAs to discuss the by right protected ADU allowance. So it'll be open to the public, really geared towards planning boards, people that also members of the public that may utilize this provision to come and ask questions. That will be on Thursday, November 20th from 4:30 to 5:30 via Zoom. So we'll have details on that Zoom link once I have that. I don't have the link just yet, but it will be on the 20th from 4:30 to 5:30. Then I'll take it back to Abby.
Okay, I have a couple more. First one is the information request protocol, just to ensure efficient and respectful use of staff time and resources. All commissioner requests for information must be directed through the chair or the vice chair. We consolidate these inquiries and present them to staff in a coordinated manner, consistent with the standard process followed by all boards and commissions here on Nantucket. Commissioners should not bypass this protocol. Doing so risks duplicating efforts, misusing limited resources, and disrupting the collaborative workflow we strive to maintain. Filing a Freedom of Information Act FOIA request should only be considered after this internal process has been exhausted. Submitting a FOIA request without first consulting the chair or vice chair is inappropriate and reflects a disregard for the commission's shared responsibilities. Please respect this process. If you need any information, just ask us first. And then the other announcement I wanted to make.
Can I ask a question about that? Just a clarifying question.
Sure.
So sometimes we have comments about minutes or questions about minutes. Are you asking us to also just direct those?
Yes.
Yeah. So instead of sending them to everyone or to staff, you want
Correct.
changes?
So you can send them to
the
us.
two of you.
Yes,
Okay.
because what happens is we meet with staff and we will already be bringing those things up. So again, that's an example of something that's
Okay.
duplicative.
And regarding a FOIA request, are you saying FOIA request made in our role as a commissioner, or are you saying that you don't want anyone to make a FOIA request unless they ask you guys?
No, what I'm saying is a FOIA request should be a last resort, and that you could just ask us for information first before filing a FOIA request. Or for commissioners first, I would imagine, but. And Brooke, I don't know if we did that.
Yeah, I just want to add, the select board's talked about this too. There's a lot of people who are starting with a FOIA request when a simple email request for information would satisfy what they want.
Right.
There's sort of this trend in the community of starting with the FOIA request. So we're trying to communicate across the board that everybody should try to request information. And if it's not forthcoming in the way or the detail or whatever, FOIA requests are anyone's right, but in terms of managing town resources, It's a huge lift to do a FOIA request. It requires culling through sometimes thousands of emails when a simple emailed question could get answered in 5 minutes. So we're just making this request across the board. The select board's talked about this too.
Yeah. I have had experiences where, like, one time I was looking for information on finance and I was told, you need to make a FOIA request. Some departments prefer it.
Yeah.
So, just some awareness that different departments have different.
Right, but that was someone made an inquiry and then they were told that the best path is a FOIA rather than FOIA as step one. I think that's the.
Correct. That's all we're asking is just respect the process of asking internally first. And then, as Brooke said, your right is obviously to do a FOIA, but you should just ask. And then the other announcement I wanted to make is just, I think everyone's aware Hurricane Melissa has been bearing down on the island of Jamaica. We have a lot of Jamaicans who have friends and family on the island. And so we just want to let our, any of our residents here, let them know that our thoughts and prayers are with them and their families and friends, and that we're here. If there's anything we can do to help, we just want people to know, we're aware. And then as the events progress, any way we can support, we will. So just wanted to make that announcement.
Great.
And now, moving on, we have a guest speaker. We have Peter Burke. He is the Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, my
And
pleasure.
kick it over to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me in today. I heard this was a really fun meeting and I can't stay away from a good time, so I thought I'd join. No, I think, Leslie and Abby had chatted about having me in, and I think the most obvious crossover with this council is the EDC side, the economic development side. And I think there's it's a good chance to remind people of the Chamber's role. We're obviously a nonprofit and we're member-based. We have, I think, 750 members in the community from just about every industry that we can get our hands on, which is great. And the more representation we have from all those industries, the better. I think the primary that people see a lot of is the vacation side of it, which is restaurants, hotels, and seasonal retailers. But we have a growing list of trades, groups, and year-round businesses as well that fall into our membership Rolodex. And so we do our best from a chamber's perspective to educate, advocate, and do our work on that side. The second piece of our operation is as one of the 16 regional tourism councils under the Mass Office of Travel and Tourism. So Mass Office of Travel and Tourism, MOT, is a state agency. They kind of crack the state into 16 zones. For lack of a better idea, it's one per county, just about. So the Vineyard has an RTC, which is the chamber. The Cape Cod has one RTC, which is the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce. We're the RTC out here, et cetera. So in that capacity, we do our best to promote Nantucket and the state as a viable tourism destination. And that is, if we're going to put it right to the finish line, to drive things that generate revenue for the state. So tax dollars in hotels, tax dollars at restaurants through meals and rentals. And then activities, right? So shopping, deep sea fishing, whatever you're spending money on, as long as you're spending money in the state's happy because they can get some tax data off of it and tax dollars. So out here, specifically on Nantucket, I think people are familiar with some of our activities, Stroll and Daffodil. Those are two really kind of out front manifestations of the work we do to drive tourism to the region and the island. I think, obviously, I hope people understand there's a cautionary tale there too. I don't know how many more people we can get for Stroll or Daffodil. So we have the other areas of the island, the other times of the year, especially, that we try to soften out the peaks and valleys of Daffodil. If we can make the first 2 weeks in May have a increase in tourism, that's a total win, because that's not currently, maximized. We also understand that if you had, July level visitation for 365 days a year would also be a problem, right? There is an understanding that there's an ebb and flow and a seasonality to our tourism every year. So I think one of the initiatives that we're hoping to do, and we've been doing the last 2 years, for the most part, any of the dollars we use from the state as a grant, we use it to underwrite some of our the guidebook that we print every year, and other off-island marketing campaigns. We're, for the most part, prohibited from spending money advertising on island. It has to be outside of a 50-mile radius. There's all these stipulations. But if you were to catch some advertising, if you were traveling and pulled up YouTube and you were in Connecticut, let's say, in the last month, you may have seen a campaign we had run called How Lovely. And that was really highlighting my favorite parts of the island, right? So we have someone riding on the bike path. Why is this person so happy? So because there's no traffic on the bike paths and just wearing her helmet. And is one of our staffers, so thank you very much for helping us out. We had a guy floating in the ocean, like, why is this guy happy? He's like, because the water's still warm in, September and October. And so we had this kind of tongue in cheek, how lovely campaign. And it's things like that that I think, we're shifting the last 2 years away from, call it straight up discover advertising and more towards behavior correction advertising. So it's like, instead of discover Nantucket, which we still find some merit in, depending on the market you're in, we might go towards a Boston-based ad where people are higher likelihood than not have at least know where we are and who we are, maybe have come here. Let's say like when you visit, leave your car on the other side. When you visit, bring a refillable water bottle. When you visit, keep an eye on mindful of your trash on the beach and help keep our island clean. So we go to encouraging appropriate behavior as opposed to straight up, hey, come check us out. We still need that discover advertising. The reality is we have a, ebb and flow to tourists, and some people come and some people go. So we keep an eye on things like the state route of where the new flights are coming from. So we had direct flights from Chicago this year. We ended up putting out, I think it was a small regional advertisement in the Chicago newspaper that said you can now fly direct from Nantucket. It wasn't a huge campaign. It was the first start we'd throw in a new tester market. So along that kind of mock rolls, we get linked into some other state and national trends of tourism as well, and things that will affect state and national tourism. Things like we have no idea what's happening at the federal political level, but we know if all of a sudden we see a dip in Canadian tourism into New England, maybe our region's a little more insulated than, let's say, southern Maine, in terms of buses coming over from the border, but we're not impacted. So what do we do as an organization to try to mitigate any of those kind of threats to tourism from that side? Another might be like the Cape and Islands Bridges Coalition. We were just recently added to partake in those discussions. If there's any sort of construction impacts on traveling over the bridges, not only will it affect tourism, but that's the other side of our business, the chamber side, which is goods and services come over those bridges and human beings come back over, back and forth over those bridges. So that affects all industries, not just tourism. So it's kind of an interesting, the last 5 years has certainly been very interesting, and I've enjoyed the role the chambers had in the community and working with a lot of people at the table and in the community. But I think in terms of networking amongst the town organizations, being a nonprofit, we have the advantage of being a little more flexible. We can kind of play in a neutral environment to start and test pilot some ideas before things get to, let's say, a vote or a committee or a commission. And we also have the voice of so many different businesses and industries that from our contact on a day-to-day basis, not all of those industries can connect at the same level to town commissions and meetings. So we kind of act as a conduit of information in two directions. I think that's been one of the charges from the board, the chambers board, is increasing our communication, whether it's difficult conversations like, holy crap, the power's out and we need help, or a little more call it routine communications, which is, hey, an announcement from the town's health department that needs to be reiterated to all the restaurants. Not all restaurants are chamber members, but we have a pretty good swath covered, so we can do our best to do things like reinforce town communications. But that's the 10-second tour. I appreciate the invite to be here. Happy to chat through any conversations or any initiatives that have come up that might have chamber effect. We can hopefully educate the public is what we're hoping to do, educate our business community. But any questions or suggestions? It's also no bad ideas in brainstorming. My team knows I had that plaque on the wall.
What are the major regional initiatives you guys are focusing on for 2026? Do you have the?
Good question. If the current, so the data points we look at, there's a couple hard truth data points we really like are taxes collected, right? That's just a number, that's a line in the sand. You got to be a little careful because that doesn't really take into account like inflation if things got more expensive. However, if you dig a little deeper, there's some hotel data that will show you like the occupancy rates. That's the number of rooms available versus the number of rooms requested. And that is something to keep an eye on. So if we see a dip in the number of requested percentage, there's 100 rooms, only 10 people are requesting them, then we try to figure out why. Was it bad weather? Was it, that's all historical data. So one of the things we're keeping an eye on nationally, we're seeing an increase in, I don't know if it's officially called long line travel, but internal travel in the US. is up a little bit. So we might not be getting road trippers from Arizona, but could we capture some from Western Pennsylvania or, regional Virginia? Like maybe that was before just whatever was flying from DC. So we're keeping an eye on this, whatever the state's seeing, we try to echo a little bit. We run very close to a lot of the state things and then very different from some of the other regions. So we're keeping an eye on domestic versus international tourism. For the most part, because there's no direct international flights commercially available, it's not a huge request for us individually. We sometimes will team up with the super region. So we'll put an ad in a regional Connecticut billboard that will say visit the Cape and the Islands, right? So we'll work together with super regions. The other is only controlling what we can control. It's like there's so much noise and so much whatever. We have one of the most uniquely advantageous locations where we have built in, I don't want to say love, but like there's people who have an emotional connection to this island from the time they visited, whether it's family wise or what. So how do we remind people of all the great things they like about Nantucket and making sure that we're promoting all of the positive things that make us a very unique region without, obviously with respect to, we can't overpromote it.
Are you worried about the World Cup?
I'm excited. I love soccer first, but my West Ham United is at the bottom of the table, so we're gonna get relegated. But for the World Cup as a tourism industry thing, yes and no. One is there's 7 games slated for Foxborough. It is proven that each of those has essentially the same economic impact as a Super Bowl game in terms of the number of people that come out. So you have 7 Super Bowls in a sense. The difference is the games themselves will be very hard for people to get to on a massive scale in terms of like the draw of the game. The teams aren't picked till December anyway. So we haven't put in any specific advertising in any markets internationally because we don't know who's coming.
Mhm.
What we think there is opportunity for is if you're traveling internationally or even inter-US to go to a World Cup game, you're probably not doing an overnight trip. You're probably just spending a couple days in the region. And I do think we have an opportunity. I'm not overly concerned because I also think there's a couple mitigating factors. There's only so many boats in a day. There's only so many, there's rooms to stay in. So making sure that we make the region available as a viable and robust destination that it is, but not overextend. There's things like official watch parties. We're not in a capacity to, all the licensing from FIFA that we've heard of is A, price prohibitive, and B, it only makes sense at a certain volume threshold. But we're trying to do something on the smaller scale, like have maybe locations where we can, if bars and restaurants have a particular affinity, maybe they, the owner has a cultural connection to a team or whatever, if we can have like the gazebo showing the US Brazil and, fairground showing a different game to try to maximize spreading the love. But each location's gonna do their own thing. It's an exciting world tourism event. There's actually Sail Boston is also coming to Boston at the end of July, which will be on the tail end of those games. That's another international huge event. And Boston's the last stop in the US, and those boats don't just disappear. They go places after that. It'll be hard for us to attract an actual tall ship on the schedule, again, price and size of the harbor.
Yeah.
But we can get spillover. Yeah.
No, yeah, and if people have connections and stuff, that might.
Yeah, we're excited. The US as an international travel stage this year is real. 250th anniversary of the American Revolution, that'll be good for long line travel as well. We don't have any major events, but yeah.
Does the chamber track visitor spending in terms of where people are coming from?
Yeah, so one of the data sets we subscribe to is called Placer AI. And I don't know if the town had a subscription at one point or not, but it was there were probably 5 that we actually test drove and vetted as best we could of these things, which is essentially they track a set number of cell phones that are opt-in based on whatever app you use as a human being. And then they mathematically project that to a population. They all seem to fail with pinpoint accuracy the closer you are to the edges of the world, right? So big rural areas, great. Small islands on the coast of Massachusetts, harder. So we had some hard data points when of like, hey, the steamship could tell us how many people came and visited. And this data was way off. So we found the data set in Placer that we think was the most accurate. It always has a grain of sand or sand out here, but that being said, we do subscribe to it through a grant and we do our best to keep an eye on it. That will tell you the origin point for visitors. No surprise, Boston, Metro New York, including the Connecticut tri-state area. And then the next biggest ones are wherever there's direct flights. If you look at a short window of time, Chicago, now Mid-Atlantic. And then you start to get a lot of averages. Texas shows up in the top 5. Actually, a lot of visitors from Texas, a lot from California, and a lot from Florida. Again, there's some law of averages there where you have, large populations of people, but we do also try to track the top, those are maybe the top 5, but what's the 8 to 12 number? And if that's, again, Philadelphia and rural Pennsylvania, maybe there's combining all those data points together, it makes sense to target that group because they're in that long line travel, and not completely foreign to Massachusetts as a state.
Okay, one more question.
Hit me.
Are you guys working on outreach to people within the community who speak other languages other than English?
Yes, funny you should say. So we have an initiative that our current board, which of course Abby sits on, to reach out. Our programming should be inclusive of more languages, right? So that's we originally, the way we started it was, hey, can we offer taking one example, a Spanish language business 101 class? It's like, well, we should actually offer a 101 class for everyone and then have it available in multiple languages. We got to start somewhere. And so we're trying to come up with a curriculum. I know we just recently formed a professional development committee. It's renamed after the education committee. And now we've teamed that up with a group of interest board members that are pulling together some multicultural programming and multilingual classes. So we want to start at the very basics for everybody. I think because Nantucket has a 200-year history at least of business out here, it's a very mature market. There are still entrepreneurs that may be coming off of a path of, hey, I worked on a painting crew. I now have my own painting crew. They've never had to, bid a job, save for tax, payroll tax, all those things. So we need to go back to block and tackling, like open a bank account, best practices. Like we need to get some 101 levels. And we're excited. We're working on that. No schedule released yet. Hopefully by, we're being honest, we're kind of in the slip and slide through Stroll right now. It's a lot of built-in programming around that. But once we get clear of the first weekend in December, we can focus back on that for the last half of December and January, February.
Yeah,
Excited.
one of the cool things about that is if it's a business 101, just for people to be aware, if we're doing kind of informational, very basics, there are a lot of tools that can be available if we model on like existing, like the federal government has something called Money Smart, and you can get those in multiple languages already. So we could just kind of take pieces from that and purpose it to our communities, but be able to provide it in multiple languages, which would be great.
Yeah.
As you pointed out, so there's a very like entrepreneurial spirit on the island, and so we just want to make sure we're able to.
Yeah, we're really lucky. There's a lot of resources. There's some members that have built in resources. Some of the banks have multi-language programming already built in. We can tap into SCORE, the federal, the Small Business Administration's education wing has a lot. There's also a state level. I can't remember the name of the acronym, but the state has a education arm that, we just met with the South Coast director, and she was incredibly kind and proactive about making sure that people out here knew they had resources, even though we're on an island. So it's good. Technology has definitely advanced where we do a lot of it in person, but if the best educator is off island, we can still tap into that, which is exciting. Lots going on.
Great.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I just had one
Yeah.
quick question. With the new bike paths that are working through, I'm thinking, well, Winnett and Tom Nevers, does the chamber weigh in on those or had a chance to weigh in on those, or just be more of a promotional role when they're done?
I don't know if we have in the creation. I will say that as an organization, we promote the heck out of biking as a great way to get around the island. Helmet wearing, Mike and I have collaborated on a couple
Mike's video
projects,
is
but
famous.
it's great.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a better way to get around the island. So
Just to be clear, the
Retroactively.
brain bucket sticker, that's his brainchild.
it's our brainchild.
Oh, that's great.
You got it in divorce. You can have that child back. I don't think we have officially in the creation of it, but I would say that without having it, I want to make sure we had clearance from the board to officially say yes. It would be an easy, yes, we would support that. This is a great way to exercise, a great way to get around. It's a great way to be, not have a car in Nantucket, which we realize is an often cited pain point. I think there's a lot of local traffic that is also responsible, but we want to make sure that anyone listening to this, wear your helmet, please.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I think the promotional part will be
Yeah.
super helpful when
Count
you're
us in.
in safety and.
Would love it. Yeah. First time I had to promote a bike path was with Cisco and I had to wear a giant blueberry suit biking down the bike path, so I'm all about promoting bike paths. Big green stem.
We could continue this series.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can we, oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, I just wondered, you said it's a nonprofit, is it a 501c3?
C6, actually.
Oh, what
Yeah,
is that?
so the difference between the C3 and the C6, primarily is if we desired, we could do a lot more lobbying. So most lobbyist groups register as C6 and they contribute to a lot of political campaigns. From a lobbying standpoint, the only contributions we make to any sort of lobbying would be we collectively with the 16 RTCs keep an eye on any state level initiatives or state laws coming through that may have effect on taxes. Hotel tax, if there's if there was an initiative to raise that rate, we would be alerted and have a conversation about it. But we do not, at this point in my 4 years, we've never made contributions to a political campaign or exercise any of the other 501c6 typical activities, but that's the way we have to do it because we do have our connection to the state level, we just have to be a C6, but very similar from a nonprofit to a nonprofit. It does change the complete write-off, like your membership's only a portion of it can be completely a tax write-off, but minor changes at that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Just want to say thank you for being here.
Mhm.
I've been on this commission for 21, is it, Leslie? I think. Have we ever had you here before?
I haven't been here.
I mean, this conversation we could have all night, so I'm promising everyone right now, I'm not gonna continue this discussion. But there's a lot of things that you talked about, the flights from Chicago, actually, that started that wasn't just this year. I pay attention to all that.
Yeah.
So, and we also have people coming here to go to the vineyard through the inter-island ferry, the Highline system,
Mhm.
because there's less flights to the vineyard. So they come down here with straight wharf and poke around and then leave, which is amazing. But you bring so much to the table of this whole, like, we're full, Nantucket is overcrowded. We do have a natural ebb and flow here. There's no full line, but it happens by itself. It's not like, like there's like the Fleet Center sold out during the bird era. Well, it wasn't the Fleet Center then, but you know what I mean. It's like that's not how it is here. You know what I mean?
Mm.
But I think we should have him here like Mark Willett, like twice a year or something,
Well, that's actually a great point. I think the idea is, you guys have seen that since I'm chair and Mike has become vice chair, what we've talked about is having these speakers come, but on a regular basis. So a lot of the people who've come in, Peter, Christie, we want them to come on a regular
Yes.
basis. And you said Mike.
you know
Mark-
why I'm saying that.
Yeah, no, but I think that's great. So you're not just like one and done. We'll want you to come back.
Happy to.
But I think that is the idea is we really want to develop these relationships and have these groups come and really interact with us so that as a commission, we're all aware of a lot of the initiatives that are going on, but B, we can get plugged into some of these areas where we might not have had them come before. So I think
Yeah.
it's a really good opportunity for us as a commission.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, I think the economic development side and the chamber's promotion, we get, some of the things I hear. We open our ears, we want any comments made with civility, but development in our mind doesn't mean raw growth either all the time, right? It doesn't mean like we want to take 100,000 people to 200,000 people a month, it doesn't mean that. It means that like, how do we maximize a slow Thursday into a busy Thursday? Like there's little tweaks I think that we can make, or how do you make a business more efficient? So they're not wasting as much money, or, educate them so they can be, better and savvier. Like that's the type of development and growth that we are also very much interested in. We still need people to step foot on the island and spend a great night and have a cup of coffee and, We need all those things as well, but I think the how do we get better side of things is also, one of those line items that we're trying to get, better at as an organization, so.
And you can just jump in, Peter and I separately had a meeting with some state officials a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about some ideas that maybe the Planning and Economic Development Commission and the Chamber can partner to do like some small business workshops or something like that. I don't know if any of you were on the board, except maybe Nat. But the NPDDC used to sponsor some workshops through the Southeastern Economic Development Corporation, which is known as SEED, and some other things, but that's been a long time, and I think it's something that we should think about getting back into.
Well, thank you so much,
Thank you very
Peter.
much.
Yeah, we'll look
Thank you.
forward to, let's see. if we can-
I'm gonna stick around for the bicycle of pedestrian advisory committee.
They're still there.
Yeah, exactly. We're still on the same page. Well, thank you very much for having me. Happy to answer questions. Red tickets start November 1st.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Red tickets, get ready. That's gonna be starting Saturday. All right, Mike, over to you on the update, and then we're gonna talk about.
Sure, and if ask Megan's help, and I think she's trying to load the slide deck there, for the report. I'm sure this is a continuation of a discussion we've had, before summer, throughout summer, and probably through most of the fall. Staff, included in your packet was a description of, memorandums of understanding with the Martha's Vineyard and Cape Cod Commission, explaining a joint transportation committee under that structure. We'd like to do something kind of similar here in Nantucket to kind of grow the scope, and I'd maybe jump to slide 3 there.
There's a bit of a lag.
Yeah. No, it's all right. Something to kind of expand the scope of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee to do something kind of similar to what takes place over on Martha's Vineyard and Cape Cod, dealing with all of their transportation assets, not just the bike and pedestrian, but still inform the long range planning priorities of all those assets, and to still serve as a outreach tool for the community to kind of promote safety and all the other priorities that we have for the other assets. If we could transition to the next slide. The Roads and Right of Way Committee, through this process of growing the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee scope, it was as we discussed at previous meetings, discussed the possibility of merging another committee with the same kind of principle here. And that was discussed with the Roads and Right of Way Committee. They've provided a recommendation that's included in your packet. This is kind of what the memorandum that's in the packet summarizes their August 21st meeting, where they supported the initiative from staff. They support working together with town administration, and the concept that we're kind of promoting is expanding the scope of Roads and Right of Way, expanding the scope of Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and forming just the one committee with a broader mission. And I'm not going to repeat the mission or read the slide there for the Roads and Right of Way Commissions, but it does promote the current mission of public access, as well as folding in the planning that's needed for some of these other vehicle and mobility accommodations. The Roads and Right of Way Committee did support a 9 person committee with NPDC as ex officio, with staff as non-voting members. And just presenting this last month, I don't think that's something we would recommend. We definitely wanted to have the NPDC voting representation on the committee. But there's also the names that are shared there as well. And it's probably going from top to bottom on the slide there, the order of importance. Names not so much important. The missions between what staff is recommending and Roads and Right of Way are fairly similar. It's the structure that's most important. I think we want to keep it to a manageable 9 person committee, but with 2 voting representatives from the NPDC. So the name suggested, and this is going to be something that staff's going to ask for. The name options that are promoted by Roads and Right of Way are either the Public Access, Transportation Planning Advisory Committee or PAC, Transportation, and Public Access Advisory Committee or TPAC. Those are two options. And if you transition to the next slide, I'm gonna ask, based on feedback from the town manager, that we deviate from this traffic type of scheme to create a division between the traffic safety work group, which is a staff level, and a transportation focus group, which is the Citizens Advisory Committee that we're trying to promote. So I think that naming will help, instead of referring to this as traffic and being confused with traffic safety, that we go with a different name. So I would change or delete that staff recommendation on name options and just abide by either the two options offered by the Roads and Right of Way Committee or something else that you all might have that you like. The mission, I think, is much more succinct and bullet pointed than what the Roads and Right of Way Committee had proposed. Although I think it does include everything that the essence of what the Roads and Right of Way Committee, the status and improvements of access over public and private ways, etc. That's an existing mission of Roads and Right of Way, and it lives here in that second bullet point. The first bullet point is something that we expanded the existing BPAC mission to include roadways, intersections, freight, parking, as well as bike and pedestrian activities. And that's we expanded that to include the town strategic plan, town master plan, as well as what was pre-existing, the long range transportation plan, the TIP, and the BWP. The other bullets on here, advising on regulations to relate to street paths and sidewalks. I think that's in the effort of expanding the scope of BPAC to include all assets. And again, that's an existing, the last bullet point is existing, maximizing public outreach opportunities. BPAC was very good with helping promote a lot of the different initiatives. And under structure there, again, what we've already talked about, having 7 at-large appointments, 2 appointments from the NPDC, and there's the staff ex officio roster. It's myself, the transportation programming manager, the DPW, and the real estate staff is non-voting members, but keeping the 9 members with 2 being NPDC voting members. Next, please. And Madam Chair, again, following up on last month's meeting, staff is asking that this body, the NPDC, provide a recommendation to the select board for what you like as a name of or the moniker of the this Citizen Advisory Committee, whether you support the staff's mission, the way it's provided, or the Roads and Right of Way, or a different type of mission statement, and then the structure of the of this committee, whether it should be either the 9 at large with non-voting NPDC members, or as with the staff recommendation, having the 2 NPDC voting members with 7 appointed by the select board. So, Madam Chair, that's all the material I have. I'm happy to answer any questions about this, but again, I'd like to reiterate that this has been shared with the various committees, and I believe there's general support for this approach.
All right, Joe.
Thank you. So I was on BPAC, and when we looked at William Street and Pleasant Street and the one-way, we were doing everything. We were looking at encroachment of hedges, anything, sidewalks. We had the historical commission, we had Holly and everyone kind of weigh in. I thought that was fantastic. So I really, when Mike said, "Will you guys broaden out?" That's what I saw as our test model for that. And I thought we had a really good group of commissioners that really weighed in, different perspectives, really added a lot of value. And then looking at kind of who was on roadways, I think that there could be a really good, committee of meshing them together. I don't think more than 9 would be advisable. I think it'd get a little too big. I think it'd be wise. I don't really care about the name, but I do understand about not having traffic in there. I think that makes sense. But I thought that we were doing this in some way, shape, or form anyways. So it's kind of nice, instead of having 2 separate meetings, to have everyone together. I also think it will kind of help on staff and having, 2 different, someone taking minutes and all that other stuff, where we can kind of, accelerate and go forward. I had talked to Ian Goulding about this, and I think that we would be great on this to kind of move this forward. I know that we have some unfinished business that we'd like to keep moving on. So I think that would be kind of, first on our list of coming forward. So, but, I like the way this is going. So, and yeah, I just really like this. I think it would be better.
Okay. Yeah, do you have a comment?
I'll echo everything Joe said, and I just wanna. Mike, you've been around a long time, okay, even though you had a little stint and just. That's what I'm talking about, but anyway, it isn't just about e-bikes. We've gotten ourselves so. Because they're so different. I mean, it's like 1918, Wisconsin shut down the first car. I mean, it's like, we've gone crazy with these things. It's not just here. So it's kind of taken front and center to everything, which it should, because of the amount of people that are on them and the way the behavior is and everything else that's going on with them. And somebody being killed, obviously, is the number one issue. But having said that, right away committee got a lot of stuff done for a long period of time since Alan took that over back whenever that was, 2002 or 3. A lot of things have changed we have the real estate committee that focuses and hones in on certain things by itself. It has nothing to do with like encroachments and all that other stuff that's part of the new. It's a new issue well, it's not a new issue, it's an old issue that's now getting attention because of the stakes, the rocks, and other objects that are within the town's right of way in most cases. I think that the level of importance that's honed in on certain things in the last, let's just say 5 years. It's really since the committee was formed with Jason Bridges. I can't even remember what year that was. Is that like 10 years ago now? I don't even know. Because it wasn't about e-bikes then. It was about bikes. And now it's more than that. I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't want to see people alienated. But the staff time, the amount of work that goes into these meetings today versus when we were in the school cafeteria and the things that were going on then are totally different now. You have to have minutes, you have to have the Zoom, you have to have somebody doing these meetings. You don't have Terry Norton running around with a notepad anymore. Okay, it's true. I mean, it's true. And so when you have area plan meetings, you have to have structured meetings. We used to meet in Ed Fawcett's kitchen, living room. That's how it was in the beginning. So having structure, I think we need to be really careful about how we blend people's time. And, a lot of people put a lot of time into this on both committees and traffic safety too, Mike. I'm not going to eliminate the word traffic in here in my head. We may eliminate it here, but it's all the same. Okay. So I like this, but I want to do it right. I don't want people to be upset. I want it to be a soft approach. I don't want anything forgotten. Projects that are on the books or on the, in the queue to get done, whether it's stuff on bike paths, stuff at intersections, or some of the stuff on Baxter Road that we haven't finished. There's a few things. I can't tell you all those things, but there's stuff out there. I don't want the public way markers to just go away. That stuff needs to continue, but not at a meeting a month where there's really not a lot to talk about. We need to condense things and collaborate these committees together in a real productive way. That way, Drew doesn't have to go to 2 meetings. He can go to 1. You can go to 1. Tracy can go to 1. Bob, whatever his last name is, can go to 1, right? Wisnowski. How do you say his name? He's a really good guy. I like him. So I think we're kind of making with these staff people that know what they're talking about. I think it's better for the town if it's done right. Better for results, honing in on getting things done. It's hard to get stuff done here, Mike. Like those signs that still say do not enter over here, it's a rotary. Ridiculous.
Point of order, I
Yeah.
do think that Mike knows that it
Yeah,
is hard to get things done.
It is so hard to get the simplest thing done, and that would be, I think this will help that. Okay,
Thank you.
that's it.
Hillary?
Yeah, thanks. So just to start with some questions. Who are you, so when we decided and we voted to expand BPAC and we're waiting, to have a more specific recommendation come. I wasn't part of that vote, but I was expecting that this transportation planning and advisory committee would still be appointed by the NPDC and would, of course, provide advice broadly. But basically, this is a, part of our role as the transportation planning organization. So is that being proposed to change?
I
I want to confirm, BPAC was not appointed by.
It was NPDC appointed.
Not at the beginning, but later.
Yeah, oh, sure.
Thank you. Ian Golding, Chair of VPAC. So it was actually my idea originally 10 years ago. I had a town warrant article that was going to come up before the town because I'm a long-term vice right, and sick of all the nemesis I had. And so Tobias Gooden called me. He was on the select board at the time, called me and said, the town would like to basically create its own committee. Would you mind withdrawing your article? And so I did. And at the time, created VPAC the following year, and Jason was the chair. And for both my original appointment and my second appointment was before the select board. I went before the select board and not before the NP and EDC, as did Harvey Young. And originally on the town website, it actually said the BPAC was an advisory group to both the select board and the NP and EDC. And then it transmogrified into being just with the NP and EDC, and you started making appointments. Thank you.
Thanks for the clarification.
So is the idea that now it's going to not any longer be appointed, the expanded transportation planning group what's the recommendation here?
Actually, just to correct one point, I have a different recollection of how this all got started, so I don't know if I want to get into back and forth about history, but I disagree. Now, BPAC was appointed by NPDC. The idea here is that the NPDC still appoint 2 members to that group, but I think the blending of the local planning and the regional planning, I think it's appropriate if the select board, if they already have an appointment process for various committees, provide 7 at-large appointments. The NPDC has their representatives on that committee. Staff serves ex officio on the committee. I have to have an advisory committee to bounce some of these long-range planning ideas off of, so I can program my documents and prioritize capital plans. So I think what this is trying to do is balance the regional and the local needs as effectively as we can and efficiently as we can, so we cut down on the number of committees and meetings that for those who volunteer and for staff.
Okay, and Brooke?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Roads and Right-of-Ways Committee approached Libby and said, where we're at now, we're sort of at an inflection point. There's not a ton of work. A lot of stuff has been done, but they were sort of looking to repurpose themselves. So they were looking outward to how can what we're contributing help with a broader conversation around the things we're doing and how they intersect with transportation planning and bicycle and, and so forth. So I think it came out in part, the 2 groups were having independent conversations about reorganizing 2 separate committees. And I think there was a realization at some point that there's a lot of crossover. And so that it made sense to bring sort of the roads and right-of-ways conversations and the BPAC conversations into a broader transportation planning conversation that crosses both advising the select board on stuff that's in the select board's purview and advising the NP and EDC on the things that are in the NP and EDC's purview, but that it's that it's a single conversation, not having separate conversations that end up maybe in conflict at some point in time.
Yeah.
So I think the framework for the appointment process being sort of select board with NP and EDC representation is where we ended up
Okay,
in those
so that's to
conversations.
clarify, so the 7 members, staff's recommendation, those 7 at large would be appointed by the select board, and as we said,
Yeah.
the NP and EDC would appoint 2 members as
Yeah.
well. That's the recommendation that staff has.
Currently, yeah.
Can I say something? Madam Chair?
Is it a new topic?
It's, no, this is right, to add to everything that's been said, I just wanna make a point about Tracy McDonald's job. We didn't have a real estate specialist on the payroll every day till she, whatever, right? That has changed a lot of the stuff that the right-of-way committee was sort of trying to do or working on. She's doing it.
Okay,
And it happens the same way, even though it's not, like, she comes to our meetings and talks about stuff like that. Like, it's still happening the same way, but structured. But somebody that's actually has the, position to actually make something happen. Whether it's, this thing with Warren's Landing Road and some of the stuff that's going on with the stakes, I mean, that issue should have been talked about 5 years ago, because it started in the last 10. Essentially, when the right of way, and I'm not for making people not be able to do anything in the right of way. That's not my goal. But there's a lot of dangerous stuff out there now. Mike, it's unbelievable. You see it. It's unbelievable what's going on. And somebody's gonna get hit by a stake and a bike at night. Something's gonna happen to somebody. It's really bad. Right on the edge of pavement. So these things have kind of bumped up. We used to have a list of takings lists. We had all that stuff. Leslie knows about that. And now it's just become new stuff that's popped up that we never talked about. So I really think that this is I don't want to say housekeeping. This isn't housekeeping. It's a little more than housekeeping, but it's restructuring and housekeeping. If this is the right thing, I don't know about the name, Mike. That's a little, I don't know. But anyway, we need to make this for the 21st. Well, we're in the 21st. We need to make this be, up to speed of what is going on now. Okay, because all the stuff that we were doing with paper streets, with beach access, is kind of happening without a committee focusing just on that. We can talk about it. We do, the real estate committee, we talk about some of that stuff. So it sort of is happening in a different way. It's not, so I think that this is good. It just needs to be rolled out right. We need to be cognizant of people's time and efforts that they've put in. Like, this isn't, these are humans. They're not getting paid. They should come to these meetings and put their time in. So, anyway, so that's it. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, so I also want to do it right, and I really do support the idea of a transportation committee to advise Mike and help Mike that is, organized and doesn't require staff to go to multiple committees that intersect in some way and take up a lot of time. And I also like looking to Martha's Vineyard and Cape Cod to see how they do it. The Martha's Vineyard Commission includes a representative of the elderly community. It includes the Martha's Vineyard Transit Authority. It includes a representative of the disabled community. It includes the Steamship Authority. It's a mix of voting and non-voting members, and it's all organized under their transportation planning organization. So I think we have the opportunity. I don't like the idea of starting, well, we have roads and rights of way and we have BPAC and we need some kind of solution. So I think we should actually start from the beginning of what a really well informed and qualified committee is going to look like in terms of bringing the kind of knowledge that we need to get these transportation projects done. We can't get a roundabout built and we need to do these things, so.
I can tell you why that hasn't happened, but that's okay.
Part of these committees, they help get community input so that we can get stuff done. And I just think that this is our chance to say, we want someone from the elderly community. We want someone from the Commission on Disability. We've got to have transit at the table. So I mentioned some of this at the last meeting, but I just think if we outline a committee, it's got to be a little bit more structured, taking the lead from some of these other things that have worked to include these kinds of voices. I guess I could get okay with having it be appointed under the select board, but we are the transportation planning organization, and all of the people who do that work for this commission. So I would be a little bit, it makes me even more interested in getting the structure right so that we aren't going to end up with a bunch of people on the committee who never get on a bicycle, or who don't talk to don't know what kids need or something like that. Does that make sense? This just feels like we are trying to solve a problem from roads and rights of way not having something to do, and a conversation that happened 5 months ago with BPAC. And I'm just concerned that we're going to end up missing an opportunity to create a really effective commission.
Madam Chair, is that all right? Just to respond, during my time in Texas, I worked with a lot of advisory committees too, and a lot of it was just technical staff. It was town engineers from a very large region. So, and that was the membership. I think what they're trying to do on the Vineyard and the Cape is still get the representation geographically. The Cape is DPW directors or assistant DPW directors. We just don't have so many DPWs. There's not a Wisconsin DPW, and so what we're trying to do here is maybe rely on the wisdom of the NPDC to pick 2 representatives that might be good representation of the committee, and rely on the select board to pick 7 other applicants that might have a good diverse split. And that was really the effort here.
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, Ian's indicated you've been interested. I know, Joe, I'm hopeful that the people who are going to apply and are interested are people who care about these issues. I would personally be a little hesitant to make it so restrictive that only could be certain people, where, as Brooke and others know, that then we run into the issue that then what happens if we don't have that person? Then does that seat just go unfilled because you don't have that exact person? And I'd rather have someone, let's say, like Ian, who's like, hey, well, I care about this and this is important to me, but maybe I didn't meet that rigid, requirement. So that would just be, I think that's the only caveat of what I would be afraid of if we made it too restrictive to be only certain people with certain roles, as opposed to just having them be at large. Dave?
Yeah, I appreciate what Hillary's saying, but I think we're gonna be picking from the same pool of people. If you're interested in the NPDC, I mean, if you're interested in this new committee, it doesn't really matter if you're appointed here or at the select board level. You're still gonna be interested, and you're gonna go to that appointing authority to get the seat. So, I don't have a problem with the select board choosing the seat. Actually, I prefer it.
I think it's,
Yeah, no.
well, I mean, it is more transparent to have the select board take over that. I think BPAC being created here, and it sort of happened like that without staggered seats. It just happened like that. I don't think that anyone said, well, I think we're just gonna let it go for 20 years without staggered seats and just keep appointing the same people. I don't think it was ever meant that way. I just think it got going because of the urgency and the need for it. And I think it's come full circle, and I think they've done an unbelievable job. And I think that this is a good opportunity with all the other issues that are coming to the table now. We never talked about encroachments. Well, we did it right away. And Joe Mocklinger redid the policy, but now it's different. It's bigger issue than it was. So it's risen to another level. And that's why I think that having one committee honed in on this stuff is good. It's not mixing it up. It's not throwing one bucket away and putting another. I think it's the one big bucket now. I do. I think the issue with the e-bikes, whether they're on the bike path, on the sidewalks, without lights at night, no sound, whatever they're doing, that is, what committee is in charge of that? I mean, theoretically, that is a police issue, a select board issue, a huge public issue. Like, it's a huge issue. I think it's better to have it more focused and have one meeting a month, or maybe two meetings a month sometimes, than it is to have all these different meetings at different times, at different places, and staff people. I think this is good. And I think that there's maybe some tweaks a little bit, but I think I've got a pretty good foundation.
Okay, Christina, the broken Joe.
I don't really have an opinion one way or the other, but I'm just curious, how you came up with, if you're putting two groups together, two committees together, one that was appointed by the select board and one that was appointed by the EPC. And also,
Okay.
but why did it go to 7 and 2? Why wouldn't it just be half and half, like NPDC appoints half
Oh.
and the select board? I'm just curious because it doesn't, like, if you're bringing two groups together, are we only appointing? And I do agree with Hillary that we are transportation, and so we do have a ballot, we have a big role to play in this. And so I would, and then my second question or second part was, why is it more transparent for the select board to appoint than the NPDC to do?
Well, Christina, the right thing is nobody watches our movie.
Actually, I was gonna say that in a previous comment, but yeah, that's true.
We do
Nobody
it.
watches TV.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, that's all.
I would just say in general, I would think more people watch a select board meeting than.
But it's not just that. The select board has a very robust public process. for
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah. It's been-
Weeks long. No,
Yeah.
no,
It's a good.
I'm answering your question.
I think-
Legitimately answering your question.
I think
People
feedback
apply,
coming out.
their applications are in the packet for a
There.
series of weeks. It's a very extensive, almost sometimes problematic in its special way of open seats, and it takes us 8 weeks to appoint someone to an open seat. When there weren't any applicants in the round before, but it's extremely public and so I mean, I do think it is not Neon's, like, to Hillary's point, like recommendations of the types of experience or interest level on certain topics, like as recommended for like who might apply in the publicity of it. And I don't know how we came, I was just talking with Mike. I don't know how it ended up being 2 out of 7. It could be 3 out of 7. I mean, I think once you get half and half, it gets confusing as to where to apply.
Yeah, I mean, I
Right,
just,
so that would be one argument, but I can't say that there was a actual conversation around why the 7 and 2.
And to clarify though, the path is us appointing members of the public. Like,
Yeah.
it's not all our commissioners, whereas this would be, is the NP and EDC appointing members of the public, or would we be appointing commissioners to? So
Yeah,
that's why I wanted to clarify. We would be appointing 2 actual commissioners
Yeah.
to be on it.
correct, and under the BPAC structure, there was just the one representative.
Right.
So I think through conversations with the chair and other staff, we said, let's make it, let's grow it from 1 to 2.
Right.
Makes sense.
But there's one on the roads and right away too, right? So.
Yeah,
So-
but it's
so we're combining the
commissioners,
two,
they're
we should
still
have-
gonna be.
We
the
should have 2
public.
seats. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I jumped in with that.
Nah,
I apologize, but with that said, right, so this committee is gonna be NPNEDC heavy. It's gonna have 2 commissioners and it's gonna have staff.
yeah,
So I think it's important.
Staff.
Yeah.
okay.
I'm
So
sorry.
what I was doing the 9, I broke it out and then I had Nat, because I knew he had been following on both, but the last one for, say myself, I was like, should it be 2? So I sent it to Ian, I said, someone else or myself, like, I didn't know if it was gonna be me or how that should be structured, but that was something that was of interest. to me of like how to balance that out. I don't really care, but that was a question I had.
Yeah, so I think now I know the answer. It's the two commissioners appointed by the
Okay.
NPDC
That's totally different.
and 7 at large.
Right.
So there's 1 at large public
Yeah.
community members applying rather than 2.
Right.
And remember, the contract review committee has had an open seat for
Yeah,
an NPDC commissioner for longer than I've been on this commission.
Mhm.
And we all do double, triple, quadruple duty, so I want to be super careful about, adding too many double seats because we're all here because we're on something else already.
Mhm.
yeah. It's a good point, I didn't think of that.
That one coming today.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, for one, I hope Joe and Ian both go to the committee and get appointed. I think you just have to, and to Hillary's point about adding other seats. There's a lot of validity to that as well, but you got to start somewhere. And
Yeah.
the 9 and 2. Or 9, excuse me,
7 and 2.
7 and 2 is a starting point.
I could see,
Hillary?
I could see going this direction that everyone's saying. And thank you for clarifying that the 2 folks are people from the NPDC. I just would like to hear I'd like to propose a specific modification, which is that, the proposal is that the NERDA be one of the ex officio, unless there's something I'm missing that would make that a really bad idea. So that we would be actually increasing, it would be you, Mike, the DPW director, the real estate specialist, and NERDA. I just don't see how we can.
No, I don't, I don't object to that. I think that.
Fantastic idea.
I think that's a good idea.
And then I have one more
That
idea.
actually would be a good idea.
Add the airport manager.
Well, Mike, anybody who you feel like you're always trying to go catching up
Ex
with.
officio.
Yeah.
I mean, the other, like the Martha's Vineyard, they have an enormous list of ex officio members, but I'm not saying to go in that direction, but. So that's one specific request, and the other specific request is to have it be 6 at large, the 2 people from the NPDC and 1 person from the Committee on Disabilities. So this is an active committee, I think it's called Commission on Disabilities, and it has a tie to the state because they have to interact with the state, the state appointed head of disabilities law. And they used to be on traffic. They used to have a person on traffic, but now that person isn't on traffic anymore. So they don't have any official connection to talking about road usage, which is actually like a very, very fundamental voice and that we have to consider. So those would be my 2 specific suggestions for changes.
So Mike, Mickey's not on the new little group you got?
Technically not staff.
Okay,
So that's why,
I think that's a separate issue that needs to be discussed with you guys. Like, that's a good point. I didn't even think about him because he's on traffic safety forever.
Yeah, he's not on
You
it
know,
anymore.
technically he was, so.
I would take a motion because all we're doing is we're making a recommendation and we could recommend that they kind of finalize how that disability person.
Can I just quickly mention about the ex officios, just for a second? I want
Yeah.
to talk about that just for a second. So having more ex officios doesn't mean more people show up. It means somebody will. Like, we've had that's the reason we have 11 MPDC members, is because of that even number things. But it doesn't mean that the DPW directors aren't invited to every one of these meetings. They are, but they're not here because they're just not here. So if we add people, like, it'll probably make a better situation because 1 or 2 will show up instead of none. Or it certainly isn't gonna be 5, because that's not how it will work. It'll just happen by natural, like somebody just can't make that meeting. But at least there's another ex officio at the meeting. I think that's a good point. And that helps me with my struggle with the 9 that I have a little bit. having more ex officio might be better to sort of cover a little bit more that we're not gonna do with more than 9. Cause I'm not pushing them no more than 9. I think it's okay, but I guess have a little teensy bit of doubt with it, but that's okay. But I like that ex officio idea of making that more official. I'm not saying we should have the input manager, by the way. I mean, unless he wants to come, I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying.
We'll have a big.
Yeah, but they got 6 towns. and I'm
No,
not-
but these are all the.
Well, you give it, bro,
Yeah,
So if everybody's ready, I'm prepared to make a motion.
make a motion,
Okay.
please.
So I move we adopt the staff recommendation
Mhm.
with the following changes.
Okay.
That there be 6 at-large seats appointed by the select board,
Mhm.
2 NPMEDC representatives, and I like Taylor's idea about a representative from and I'm gonna say a representative appointed by the Commission on Disabilities, not necessarily someone serving. So that we don't run into the problem of nobody
Yes.
wants
He
this
just
and
did
then
it
that
anyway.
seat sits
Yeah.
empty, right?
Right.
So
Okay.
I want to be very specific. And I also would like to give the NPNEDC the option to appoint a community member in lieu of a commissioner. Which is why we ran into the problem with CRC, right? So if everybody's overburdened and we don't, for some point down the road, they don't have 2 who want to serve. We don't have 2 that want to serve. They can appoint a community member in lieu.
Leslie, can that be written into this? 'Cause that
Yes,
makes
it
sense.
can be, as
Okay,
long
good.
as it's adopted that way in the.
Which name? I personally like
Okay.
DPAC.
So I'm not going to name, I'm going to structure and mission and then,
Ex officio.
and the ex officios.
The transportation program manager, the DPW director,
Yeah.
the NERDA, and the real estate specialist.
Yep.
And anyone else who we deem important to invite, I guess, but at least those people.
So I have one comment about your proposal about the NPNEDC. I actually think, given that we are the transportation planning organization and we have this responsibility allocated to us, it comes with like a regulatory responsibility to make sure that it's a 3C process. I would be a little concerned about the commission losing sight and, just putting somebody else on. I think that we need to stay close to this board or because we have to approve all these all these projects. Like we have to approve the chip. We have to approve the unified work, what is it? We have to approve that. And we have to actually sign, the chair of this board has to sign these documents. And then, so if we didn't have adequate representation on that committee from this group, I would be concerned about that. So I really like your motion, but I think the NPDDC folks should be people.
Okay, well, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second on the motion as
Second.
second? Okay,
Yeah.
so, we'll just vote.
Well, I would ask for that modification because
I will not make that modification because I think it's a mistake and I think having flexibility built in and that there's 11 people here who will either be available or vet whoever the person they represent. And
right, well, as long as it's clear that
Right.
someone has to be,
Can we vote on the motion?
well,
All right.
can I clarify the motion as well?
He already made the motion.
But
and
Brooke,
she said
is
she's
your
not-
motion
she's not-
saying, is your motion saying that the NPNEDC can appoint someone, and if no one is available,
That's what she meant.
Yeah.
that's
she
what
said.
you meant, okay. I'm
Okay.
okay with that.
All right,
Thank you
she's
for
fine.
letting
Point of
me
order.
be
Please
clear.
vote on the motion. Dave,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Nat,
All right.
Christina, Brooke,
I,
Hillary,
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
And as the chair, I vote aye, the motion passes. So, Mike, you have your marching.
The unnamed committee.
No, I said P-PAC, I put the name.
Was that part of the?
okay, I said the name wasn't in my.
Yeah.
Sorry.
20-foot unnamed ways.
I was a little confused because I thought Mike contradicted himself
I-
about taking away the proposed name.
I don't like this, no longer do I like the staff recommendation that I provided. you.
Okay, what's your recommendation now?
I would transport TPAC, the
TPAC. I like
transportation and
All right, so we
public
vote on that.
access.
Like I said, do you want me to do a separate?
I move that's the name.
Yes.
Okay, second,
Aye, second.
Okay, motion by Brooke, second by Hillary. Okay, the name T-Pat, Dave.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Nat.
Aye.
Christina.
Aye.
Brooke.
Aye.
Hillary.
We're good.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
And the chair, I vote aye, so T-Pack it is.
Okay.
Okay.
Was it was sort of ring for it.
Yeah, I know, that's why I like it, it's good.
You better put your name in.
Okay,
Please, thank you.
thank you, Ian.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Colonel.
Okay,
Moving
on to DLTA.
I do, I work in the house.
I used to cut the hedge. Only the only one to pay one.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, the DLTA contract, the district local technical assistance, this is funding that you get from the state as one of the 13 regional planning agencies each year. It's $50,000 this year, which is what it has historically been up until the past couple of years. We're back to the $50,000. There's a 10% match locally, $5,000, which is easy for us to contribute. And just asking for a motion to accept the contract, or excuse me, approve the contract and authorize the director to sign.
I had a question about the overhead rate. What is the overhead rate?
Oh, Lord.
Well, it's a complicated calculation that is currently 80 something.
Is the
percent.
question, what's the rate or what is it? The definition of an overhead rate?
Well, no, it says in here that the overhead is 83%.
83%.
Does that mean that we can bill an additional 83% or we don't get more than 50 plus 5?
Correct.
And 83% of that can be overhead.
Correct. That's
Not-
usually what that means.
So the 83%, Mike, this, you do this through the 3C. I think you would describe it better than I will.
Salary plus your operating expenses is direct salary and your indirect overhead. So those two together would be the staff cost. And the overhead rate is usually a calculation of like whatever it costs to run the office, the phone bill and everything divided by the salaries.
And all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like it's such a small amount of money, but I was just curious if the overhead was in addition, but so we're kind of spreading this around to pay for salaries.
Yeah.
Basically.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
It's not, it's better to pay for salaries, can be used for salaries.
It can be.
No, it
You
cannot be.
But the overhead can
The
be used
over-
for salaries, is
Yeah,
what I'm
the-
saying.
yes, the $50,000.
Which is 83% of the 50.
Motion. Nat, okay, Dave, who seconded?
I'll second.
Mike, okay. Motion by Dave, second by Mike. All right, Dave.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Nat,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Brooke.
Aye.
Hillary.
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and the chair, we vote aye, so we can
Okay.
work on it.
Elaine from EOHLC, it used to be DHCD for a million years. I'll be happy to get that back tomorrow.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I had a question about the transportation plan. Can I ask a question about that, especially since Mike is here? I didn't know, we kind of moved on to DLTA, but I had a
Yeah,
question on the program manager update.
well,
It's just the one item on the agenda,
yeah,
but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah,
if you have
just
some
on the
stuff.
planning
Well,
report.
If
up
it's
to the
quick.
chair.
well, if it's quick,
Yeah, so about the milestone rotary reconstruction and the Tom Nevers rotary reconstruction, I have two questions. The first, well, three actually. The first is, do we have a date for when the public meetings are gonna be that Mass DOT is having?
Not yet, not yet.
Okay, and where, is there a place where we can go to see the percent design? Is it 25% complete now or 50 or?
Madam Chair, I've kind of been asked to kind of keep whatever staff has been providing recommendations to DOT and their design consultant, and it's kind of understood between DOT and staff that that'll all be shared at the public informational meeting when that's scheduled.
and we don't have a date for that.
Yeah, and we don't share our,
Okay, so we don't share working documents till
Exactly.
it's ready. for
So there's
public
no
viewing.
place, it's not posted somewhere, was my.
No, because it sounds like it's not public information.
I want to say if I'm diligent, I would have set up a project website, but it would be almost nothing on it, except for previous recommendations.
And so the designs that you shared with the historical commission, did they also assume that the roundabout would be designed for a 72-foot long truck? Or was that something that was added since you previewed the design with the historical commission?
Okay, point of order, I don't know the.
This is getting really into
Yeah,
the
this
weeds of
is-
the design, so.
Yeah, and this.
As you say, that's part of the ongoing discussion.
And it's not really on the agenda, so I think we'll have.
I just, you know,
Well, when we have a future update, we can
Yeah,
bring this topic back. I think we just need to make sure we're.
the best thing that I can offer is what's in my report.
Okay.
And that's about as succinct as I can describe it, but it's an ongoing discussion.
Okay, all right, thank you. Moving on to the seasonal communities draft regulation. In your packet, everybody, there was, and Megan shared it.
Yeah, there was a draft letter for your consideration. The ask is gonna be that you authorize the chair to sign this on behalf of the commission. I also included letters from the planning board, the Affordable Housing Trust, and the county commissioners. The NPNEDC letter just summarizes the concerns of the joint Affordable Housing Trust County Commissioners letter and the planning board's letter. And we'll attach all the documents together to go on up to EOHLC. So the summarization letter from this group asked for clarification on the zoning requirements of undersized lots.
There you go. Thank you for that.
And I'm just gonna summarize, and if you want more detail, please stop me. Definition and enforcement of the year-round housing units, the duration of the year-round restrictions, ongoing municipal preference and shy list eligibility, and a legislative amendment, implementation and reporting considerations. So some of those, in our opinion, were a little too strict. Also that ties into the housing needs assessment. And then while not in the regulations, a plug to the transfer fee, which you continuously supported. So if there's no questions, I would ask that you authorize Abby to sign this letter on your behalf.
So I had like a computer glitch this weekend, so I went in my office, for some reason I still couldn't download it, but you guys shared it.
Yeah.
I didn't have a chance to read it, so I'm
Yeah, I
gonna
didn't-
abstain.
I didn't see a letter. Was it?
It's in there, I couldn't
Packet.
download it, and for some reason I kept getting an error
Where is it?
It's
on the back.
Yeah, it's in the packet.
Every once in a while on this new system, I can, it just won't open. There's just nothing there.
If I can do it, anybody can. It's got 7 bullets.
Yeah.
And it really summarizes, it's just a summary document because where you all are, how.
Looks like you've taken all of our concerns.
Yeah, there's a letter.
Kinda
Dave, there's a
condensed it
letter.
in.
Yeah, Tom.
This undersized lot thing, I don't mean to interrupt, Madam Chair, through you to Megan. You're the specialist now with this, like, it's like everyone's looking to you because you're just like taking this craziness on.
Mhm.
Is this, is this gonna, is this a living document, as they used to say? Is this gonna be something that's gonna have changes over time?
Well, the letter.
Well, you know what I mean, I'm talking about, like we talked about the covenant lot the other day,
Yeah.
and after I fell over and picked myself up. Okay, that's a big deal.
Mhm.
Like, nobody knows these things are going on, and we got rid of the tertiary. Kept the covenant tertiary though, right? Okay. At some point in time, Nantucket is gonna have to kind of like come out of the other 350 towns and cities and like, okay, what are we really doing over here versus everywhere else? Cause there's towns that don't have ground cover calculations at all, which I just found that out when this all started. I'm like in shock. Like, I can see why the state's done something. If you have communities that literally have never changed anything forever. And here we are, 100 years ahead of everybody else, So I'm glad you put that.
Yeah.
Cause that's important.
And that was the key component of the planning board letter, right? Because planning board is tasked with modifying the zoning bylaw and kind of keeping all of those recommendations in order. So the planning board's sole focus in their letter was about that. This captures that to a certain extent.
Yeah.
The details
It's
in the
good.
planning board letter. This is meant to summarize the letters from both groups and send all three letters up together.
Yeah, just to your point, I'm doing a project in Foxborough and the ground cover for an acre lot is 75%.
75
Yeah, so just FYI.
with 7.
Right.
Like, I mean,
Just so you know, that's,
Yeah.
that's
but
what.
that sounds like a 5,000 square foot.
I will say the public comment period on these draft regulations are open until Friday, so that's why it's important to get these comments submitted as soon as possible. We can expect, I was on a call on Friday, we can expect final regulations, they're shooting for early to mid-December. So we'll know more information then. It's kind of tight-lipped on what may or may not be, changed. But
With
It's
their
important for us
original-
it's
to send our
important,
letters.
if you
Yeah.
take the consideration, if you take comments into consideration, so it's really important to get these letters sent up to the state.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the letter.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mike, second by Nat. All right, everybody, let's vote. Dave,
Aye.
Joe,
Abstain.
Nat,
Aye.
Christina, Brooke. Aye. Hillary,
Abstain.
Mike,
Aye.
and as the chair, I vote aye. Okay, so
Thank you.
Megan, can I just ask you a follow-up on this, just in general, with all the seasonal community stuff? You're like entrenched in it,
Yeah.
and like, we're never gonna catch up to you.
Mhm.
So. How do we have like an update on this? Like, between whether it's planning, whether it's MPDC, it doesn't really matter to me. This is. Are there other places having problems with some of this stuff, or that doesn't fit their zoning? I mean, is there another town in Mass that's like us, that's like 100 years ahead of the state? No, they're all behind. We're like the only one that's got everything figured out.
I mean, other
Unbelievable.
communities have comments,
You know what I mean?
but I think,
Talking about it.
I think, after Christy and I presented at One Cape, we immediately had 4 other communities reach out to us wanting to schedule meetings immediately to see how they can use things that we're doing in their community. So I think,
Yeah.
other communities around the state, particularly seasonal communities, look to us for guidance. So, so it's difficult.
yeah.
Okay.
Say, Megan as your representative on the Seasonal Communities Council and Christy Fiorentella as the town's director of housing. They've both been like really, really deeply involved in this and they've spent a ton of time. And I think they've both done like a really great job understanding this, trying to think about, how these regulations benefit or to the detriment of some of our local initiatives.
Yeah.
And have done a great job communicating that to the state officials. So I just want to say, thank you to both of them, and Megan spent a lot of time on this letter, and I think she did a really great job.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right, thank you. Moving on, committee reports. Anybody got anything? All right, moving on, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Chair.
Okay, second. Okay, motion by Mike, second by Brooke. Dave,
Aye.
Joe,
Right.
Nat, Christina. Aye. Brooke, aye. Hillary. Aye. Mike.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you, everybody. We will see you in November.
Did you see the,
Don't mind me, I'm getting in your sweets over here.
Hey, lady.
I was looking for something to share.
Oh, I was just gonna text